Hey everybody, I'm Daniel from Spacedock. In March 2012, Mass Effect 3, my favourite game of all time and the best game in the Mass Effect trilogy as far as I'm concerned, was released. Generally people loved the game, but rather famously people hated the ending. Huge numbers of fans really disliked the ending, so much to the point that BioWare ultimately released their Extended Cut DLC, which doesn't change the ending, but adds additional context to the meanings of what happens there. But personally, I had no problem at all with Mass Effect 3's ending, even before the Extended Cut was released. It's better with the Extended Cut because it's just more information, but I still think the central concept of that ending is perfect thematically for the entire trilogy, and I'm going to explain why. At the end of Mass Effect 3, you're faced with 3 choices, 4 if you have the Extended Cut, which again is just more context. You can use the Crucible to destroy all synthetic life, meaning the Reapers, the Geth, and EDI. You can be convinced by the shady Elusive Man to use the Crucible to control the Reapers, which, as we see in the resulting montage, seems to have a rather sinister overtone that implies that it has basically just turned humanity into more Reapers. You can pick the green synthesis ending, which essentially merges organic and synthetic life into this new third form of sapient being that now lives across the galaxy. I hate this ending. I hate it because it is clearly a studio-mandated get-out-of-jail-free card ending that is sufficiently vague to not properly explain what you're doing and to allow people to feel like they've accomplished something when they have made demonstrably the wrong choice, because the entire point of the final decision of Mass Effect is that there is no choice. Synthesis, control, and refusal all result in the elimination of civilization, either by completely destroying it, causing it to be enslaved by the Reapers, or replacing it with something entirely different that does not represent what you fought for across the trilogy. The only decision that is right is destroy. You have to choose to let the Geth die, you have to choose to let EDI die, in order to save the current population of the galaxy, and the population of the galaxy in all future cycles from the Reapers. The game is telling you that in the face of that decision, no sacrifice is too great. EDI herself spends almost the entire game underlining how she has learned that she is willing to sacrifice herself in order to preserve the freedom and safety of sapient beings. And she would make exactly the same argument that I'm making now if she was placed in Shepard's position. This ending is perfect because it hits you with the central thematic point of the entire Mass Effect trilogy, and that is that the hardest choice is when there is no choice. Leaders in positions like this, as their stress and tension and responsibilities increase, don't have the luxury to behave like Captain Kirk figures smugly cruising through life as everything goes well around them. Shepard doesn't have the luxury of taking a census to check if everybody under her command is happy to sacrifice themselves or not. The game forces you to put yourself in the position that Shepard is in. She has to choose whether to sacrifice a few billion Geth and EDI in order to save not only the billions upon billions of people currently living in the galaxy, but the quadrillions of people that would die and be enslaved by the Reapers in future cycles if they're not stopped now. Across the previous 5 cycles before the one that we're currently experiencing in the games, entire galaxies of people have died to build and preserve the Crucible device for our cycle to use. If we choose not to use that in the refusal option, or to use it in a way that does not destroy the Reapers as it was intended, then everything that all of those previous cycles died to do was completely in vain, and we're dooming dozens more cycles in future to die in the same way. Don't misunderstand me, it's a terrible shame that the Geth and EDI have to be sacrificed in order to win, but if you've been playing this game to improve the rights and consideration of synthetic life in the galaxy, then you have to accept that those synthetic beings are held to the same standard to fight and sacrifice themselves in order to save the galaxy from the Reapers as any organic in the same situation would be. Granting them special protection at the expense of everybody else is something that even they would think was unreasonable. Choices like this are the hallmarks of the Mass Effect story, and it should be no surprise to anyone that the ending of the series was a similar such no-win scenario. Anybody who was expecting Return of the Jedi was out of their mind. There was no decision that saved both Ashley and Kaidan. There was no decision to save both Tali and Legion, and if there had been, it would have lessened the story as a result, because it would have undermined the central theme of Shepard's narrative. It is perfectly appropriate that the ending of the entire trilogy works this way. It holds you to the mark and forces you to choose to sacrifice people who you don't want to sacrifice in order to save the greater number of people in the end. And it may have cutscenes placed in by BioWare to make you feel more comfortable about picking the other options, but really, the game knows just as well as any player knows knows that they are the wrong choice. Destroy is the only viable option. The only one that saves civilization in the form we've seen it across the 3 games and saves all future cycles from being tormented by the Reapers. It's no coincidence that both Control and Synthesis are representative of the ideologies of 2 of the major villains in the Mass Effect trilogy, Saren for Synthesis and the Elusive Man for Control. These are 2 people who tried to find other ways out of the Reaper situation and were both indoctrinated and ultimately fell under the Reaper's control. Destroying the Reapers is the only choice. And even if it meant sacrificing all of the people of the galaxy in our current cycle, not just the Geth, in order to save future cycles from the same fate, it would be worthwhile. It's a terrible decision for Shepard to have to make, but playing as someone who has to make hard decisions like that is the entire message of Mass Effect. Commanding a starship, commanding a navy, being a leader of nations is a more emotionally challenging task, requiring a greater strength of character than most science fiction, and most science fantasy in particular, portrays it to be. If a character like James Holden from The Expanse, or James Kirk from Star Trek, somebody who allows idealism to overrule pragmatism, was faced with this choice, they would undoubtedly choose refusal or something to that effect, and as the trilogy makes abundantly clear, it would have resulted in disaster. It's the same message we see in Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, where Kirk has to learn that there is such thing as a no-win scenario. You can't always reprogram the Kobayashi Maru, and after 3 games of build-up, slowly impressing this theme on the players across hours and hours of gameplay, it shouldn't surprise anyone that the ultimate no-win scenario was the final decision. And even if you disagree with me about Destroy being the best option, and I'm sure there's much debate happening in the comments below this video already, but the argument I would make is that the very existence of that debate vindicates this ending. The fact that it inspires us to argue and discuss what the best decision is here, how the themes of the story inform this ending, then it has done its job. It's created a far more thoughtful, far more meaningful conclusion, sparked far greater debate and far greater interest than if they'd simply blown up the Reapers, set off some fireworks, and had a party. I'm very glad that the Shepard Trilogy ends the way it does, and I don't think it deserves even the tiniest fraction of the criticism that it regularly gets. But I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments below whether or not you agree with me. This is Daniel from Spacedock, signing off. Thank you for watching Spacedock. Please remember to like, subscribe and share for more science fiction spacecraft summaries. If you enjoy the channel, why not consider pledging your support on Patreon? For just $1 a month, you'll be able to access the Spacedock schedule to see what's coming up.